Life is a relentless test. At every turn, new challenges arise, some expected, others striking like lightning on a clear day. The weak are consumed by frustration, anger, and despair. But the Stoic? The Stoic sees an opportunity. For over 2,000 years, Stoicism has been the philosophy of those who refuse to be broken. It is not a set of abstract theories. It is a framework for living, a system of thought designed to make the human spirit indomitable. Marcus Aurelius, a ruler burdened with war and betrayal, wrote in his private journals about the importance of self-mastery. Epictetus, a former slave, taught that true power lies not in circumstance but in one's own mind. Seneca, despite exile and political turmoil, remained unwavering in his commitment to wisdom. Their words echo through time, offering guidance for those who seek strength, resilience, and clarity. This is not about empty motivation. It is about learning to see obstacles differently, to think with clarity, and to act with purpose. In this video, we will explore 10 profound Stoic perspectives that will not only help you endure life's challenges, but master them. Because in the end, the obstacle is not in your way. The obstacle is the way. 1. Perception. Seeing challenges as opportunities. A ship's captain does not curse the storm, he navigates it. A sculptor does not complain about the roughness of the marble, he shapes it. The Stoic does not resent obstacles, he transforms them. Life will present difficulties. That is inevitable, but what truly matters is not the challenge itself, but how we perceive it. Is it a roadblock or is it a lesson? Is it the end or is it a beginning? Consider the story of Zeno of Citium, the very founder of Stoicism. He was once a wealthy merchant, his future seemingly secure. But one day a shipwreck destroyed everything he owned. Devastated, he found himself in Athens, wandering aimlessly until he stumbled into a bookshop and began reading about the teachings of Socrates. That single moment of misfortune became the turning point of his life. He did not see the loss as ruin, but as redirection. Had he not lost everything, he may have never discovered Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. A setback is never just a setback. It is an opportunity to adapt, to grow, to sharpen oneself against the whetstone of adversity. When something unexpected disrupts your plans, ask yourself, what can this teach me? How can I use this? Every struggle, every hardship contains a hidden advantage, if only we have the wisdom to see it. The world does not change because we wish it to. It changes when we adjust our perception of it. But perception is just the beginning. Understanding what is in our control and what is not is the next step. Because once we master that distinction, we unlock a power that most people never realize they have. 2. Dichotomy of control, focusing only on what you can influence. Imagine standing in the middle of a violent storm, screaming at the sky, demanding the rain to stop. It wouldn't matter how loud you yelled, the storm would rage on, indifferent to your frustration. This is how most people go through life, wasting energy on things they cannot change, drowning in frustration over the uncontrollable. But the Stoic? The Stoic does not fight the storm. He accepts it, adjusts his sails, and focuses on what he can control, his own actions, his own response. This is the dichotomy of control, one of the most powerful Stoic principles. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, put it simply, some things are up to us, and some things are not. Our thoughts, our actions, our choices, these are within our power. But external events, the opinions of others, the past, these are beyond our control. And yet, how much of our suffering comes from trying to control the uncontrollable? Take Marcus Aurelius. As Emperor of Rome, he faced wars, plagues, and political betrayal. But instead of being consumed by fear and anger, he focused only on what was within his power, his decisions, his character, his ability to lead with wisdom and virtue. He wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Think about your own life. How often do you stress over what others think of you? How often do you wish the past were different? How often do you fear outcomes that haven't even happened yet? What if instead you shifted your focus? What if instead of trying to control the world, you mastered yourself? Because in the end, true power does not come from controlling everything. It comes from realizing what is within your control and letting go of everything else. And when we stop wasting energy on the uncontrollable, we free our minds for something far greater, embracing reality as it is. That brings us to our next Stoic perspective, Memento Mori, remembering that life itself is fleeting and must be lived with purpose. 3. Memento Mori, using mortality to gain perspective. There is a painting technique called vanitas, often used in ancient artwork. The scene might depict a lavish feast, a nobleman deep in thought, or a scholar surrounded by books. But somewhere, hidden in the composition, there is always a skull, a quiet reminder that no matter how grand the moment, death is always near. The Stoics understood this truth well. They did not see death as something to be feared, but as a tool to sharpen the mind, to bring clarity to life. Memento Mori, remember that you must die. These words were not meant to be morbid. They were meant to awaken. Seneca, in his letters, wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." He understood that procrastination is the enemy of a meaningful life. How often do we tell ourselves, "Tomorrow I'll start"? But what if tomorrow never comes? Consider Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the vast Roman Empire. With unlimited power at his fingertips, he could have indulged in excess, yet he constantly reminded himself of his own mortality. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Imagine if we lived each day with that urgency. Would we still waste time on petty arguments? Would we still let fear stop us from chasing what truly matters? In the modern world, we avoid thoughts of death. We distract ourselves with entertainment, material possessions, and endless obligations. But ignoring mortality does not make it disappear. It only makes us live carelessly. The Stoic, however, embraces this truth not to dwell in sorrow but to live with purpose. 2. Ask yourself, if today were your last, would you be proud of how you lived? Would you leave behind regrets? Would you have spoken the words that needed to be said? Because when you remember that time is fleeting, you stop wasting it. You focus only on what matters. And what happens when you embrace everything that comes your way, not just death, but every event, good or bad, as necessary, even welcome? That's where the next Stoic principle comes in. Amor Fati, learning to love fate itself. 4. Embracing everything that happens. A blacksmith does not curse the fire that melts his metal. He welcomes it, for he knows it is necessary to forge something stronger. A Stoic does not reject hardship, misfortune, or fate. He embraces it, for he knows it is the raw material from which his character is shaped. This is Amor Fati, love of fate. Not mere acceptance, but love. The ability to say, whatever happens, I will not only endure it, I will embrace it. Friedrich Nietzsche, heavily influenced by Stoicism, described it best. My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Imagine that. No regret, no resistance, just absolute alignment with reality. Marcus Aurelius lived by this principle. As emperor, he faced war, betrayal, and personal loss. He could have seen these events as curses. Instead, he wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." This is Amor Fati, the idea that everything, no matter how painful, can be used as fuel for growth. Think about your own life. How much energy have you spent wishing things were different? Wishing the past had played out another way? Wishing events beyond your control had been more favorable? But what if, instead of resisting, you accepted? What if you went further, not just accepting but embracing? The Stoics understood that everything in life, success and failure, joy and suffering, plays a role in shaping who we become. To reject any part of it is to reject life itself. Amor Fati is not about passive resignation, it is about active transformation. Imagine waking up tomorrow with a new mindset. No matter what happens, whether fortune smiles upon you or hardship strikes, you say, "Good, this is mine to deal with, mine to learn from, mine to use." Because once you embrace all that life throws at you, you stop fearing the future. You stop resisting reality. You become unbreakable. And when you fully embrace life, you start to see the immense power of the present moment, the only place where true action happens. That brings us to our next Stoic perspective, the power of the present moment. 5. The power of the present moment, living in the now. A man stands at the edge of a river watching the water rush past. He reaches out trying to grasp it, but the current slips through his fingers. The past is like that water. It is gone. No matter how hard we try, we cannot hold on to it. Yet so many people live their lives trapped in two illusions: regret for the past and anxiety for the future. They replay old mistakes, dwell on missed opportunities, or fear what tomorrow may bring. But what about right now? What about the only moment that actually exists? The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling the most powerful empire of his time, constantly reminded himself of one truth: confine yourself to the present. No matter what burdens he carried, he knew that the only thing within his reach was this very moment, the decisions, actions, and mindset of now. Seneca echoed this when he wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." How much of your suffering is real? And how much is simply a story you tell yourself about the past or the future? The truth is, the present moment is rarely unbearable. It is only when we attach past regrets or future worries that it becomes overwhelming. Think about it. Have you ever felt stress about something that hasn't even happened yet? We play out worst-case scenarios in our minds, as if worrying about them will somehow prevent them. But worry changes nothing. Only action does. The Stoics teach us that the present is all we ever truly have. You cannot rewrite yesterday, and tomorrow is beyond your grasp. But this moment is yours. So how do we truly live in the now? By anchoring ourselves in what is within our control, our thoughts, our actions, our response to life. By engaging fully with the task at hand, whether it's as simple as drinking a cup of tea or as complex as making a life-altering decision. Because once you master the present, life stops feeling like a storm dragging you helplessly along. You become centered, focused, untouchable. And when you can live in the moment, you begin to realize the value of discomfort, the tool that sharpens both body and mind. That leads us to our next Stoic principle, voluntary discomfort, strengthening yourself through hardship. 6. Voluntary discomfort, strengthening yourself through hardship. Comfort is a slow poison. It lulls the mind into complacency, weakens the body, and makes the soul fragile. The more we chase ease, the less prepared we are when life inevitably throws hardship our way. The Stoics understood this, which is why they practiced voluntary discomfort, deliberately exposing themselves to difficulty to build resilience before it was forced upon them. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, would periodically sleep on the ground with only a rough cloak, eating the simplest of meals. He would then ask himself, "Is this what I feared?" The lesson? Much of what we dread is not as terrible as our minds make it out to be. By voluntarily facing hardship, we strip it of its power. The modern world has shielded us from discomfort. We live in climate-controlled homes, consume food with minimal effort, and avoid struggle whenever possible. But when ease becomes the default, even minor hardships feel unbearable. The Stoics knew better. They sought out difficulty, not for the sake of suffering, but to become stronger. How can we apply this today? By intentionally doing hard things. Wake up earlier than you want to. Train your body when it begs for rest. Take cold showers to remind yourself that discomfort is temporary. Fast for a day to realize that hunger is not a crisis. Speak your mind when fear tells you to stay silent. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." By practicing voluntary discomfort, we break our dependence on comfort, and with it, the fear of losing it. We become adaptable, unshaken by life's unpredictability. The goal is not suffering, it is preparation, because life will test you. And when it does, you will either crumble under the weight of hardship or stand firm, knowing you have already endured worse by choice. And what happens when we stop fearing hardship and embrace discipline? We unlock our greatest potential. That brings us to our next Stoic principle: self-discipline, mastering the art of control. 7. Mind over emotion, mastering inner turmoil. A ship caught in a storm has two choices. It can be tossed violently by the waves, or it can drop its anchor and stay steady. Your mind is that ship. Your emotions are the storm, and your ability to control them, that is your anchor. In life, emotions will come: anger, fear, sadness, frustration. The Stoics never denied this. But what separates a Stoic from the ordinary person is mastery over these emotions, not slavery to them. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." You cannot control external events, but you can control the meaning you give them. Someone insults you. Do you react with rage, or do you remain unmoved? You fail at something. Do you spiral into self-pity, or do you see it as a lesson? Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, was constantly tested. Betrayals, wars, and the weight of an empire rested on his shoulders. He could have succumbed to fear or anger, but instead, he trained himself to observe his emotions without being ruled by them. If you are distressed by anything external, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your judgment about it. How do we practice this today? Pause before reacting. Observe your emotions, but do not let them dictate your actions. Imagine your mind as a fortress. Do you leave the gates open to every impulse, or do you decide who enters? This does not mean suppressing emotion. It means understanding it. If anger arises, ask, "Why do I feel this? Is this worth my energy?" If fear grips you, question, "Is this real, or just my mind creating worst-case scenarios?" The moment you become aware, you reclaim control. A Stoic does not eliminate emotion. He masters it. He feels deeply, but he is not shaken. And when you develop this skill, nothing, not insults, not failure, not uncertainty, can break you. And once you control your inner world, you realize something even greater. True strength lies in serving a purpose beyond yourself. That brings us to our next Stoic principle: the power of purpose. Living for something greater. 8. Self-discipline and consistency, the key to lasting strength. Imagine a river carving its way through rock. The force of the water is not what shapes the stone, it is the constant flow over time. Self-discipline is the same. It is not a single, powerful act, but the small, consistent efforts made day after day that create lasting strength. The Stoics understood that without discipline, all the wisdom in the world would amount to nothing. Consistency is the bridge between knowledge and action. You may know what is good for you, but unless you have the discipline to apply it every day, the knowledge is meaningless. Marcus Aurelius, despite his imperial responsibilities, disciplined himself with unwavering consistency. He did not rely on moments of intense inspiration. Instead, he wrote daily reflections, practiced humility, and made deliberate decisions in his personal life to cultivate virtue. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. For Marcus, every obstacle was an opportunity to strengthen his resolve, and every day was an opportunity to practice his principles. Seneca, too, believed in the power of consistent practice. He wrote in his letters, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Time is the one thing we cannot get back, and so the disciplined person uses it wisely, creating habits that move them closer to their goals every single day. How can we embrace self-discipline today? Start with small commitments and build them into your daily routine. Maybe it's waking up earlier, meditating for 5 minutes, or setting aside time for meaningful work. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be consistent. The more you practice discipline, the easier it becomes to stay on track, and the more strength you build, both mentally and physically. Self-discipline, when practiced consistently, becomes a force of nature. It turns the impossible into the possible, and makes even the most difficult tasks seem achievable. When you commit to discipline, you unlock a level of inner strength that can endure any challenge. And once you have this strength, you realize that life is not about achieving perfection, it's about constant growth. Which brings us to the next Stoic principle, the growth mindset. embracing the journey, not just the destination. 9. Viewing obstacles as the path, transforming setbacks into strength. Picture a warrior standing at the edge of a battlefield, facing an enemy force much stronger than his own. At first glance, defeat seems inevitable. Yet, instead of retreating, the warrior charges forward, his conviction undeterred. What if the greatest obstacle was not something to fear but something to embrace? This is the Stoic principle of viewing obstacles not as roadblocks but as the very path to growth. What stands in your way is the way. The obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius lived this philosophy every day. As emperor, he faced countless challenges: war, plague, political betrayal. Yet instead of seeing these as misfortunes, he recognized that these trials were essential for his development. Each obstacle was an opportunity to practice virtue, to show patience, wisdom, courage, and self-control. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The Stoics believed that every difficulty is an invitation to strengthen our character, to demonstrate resilience, perseverance, and adaptability. Take the example of Epictetus, who was born into slavery. Though his circumstances were harsh, he did not see them as hindrances. He saw them as the perfect conditions for developing his inner freedom. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In the modern world, we often see obstacles as setbacks. We view failure, loss, and disappointment as signs that we're on the wrong path. But what if, instead of running from these experiences, we leaned into them? What if we understood that the path to success is not a straight line, but a series of challenges that sharpen us? Imagine a person facing a difficult challenge, perhaps a career setback, a relationship issue, or a personal failure. Instead of seeing it as the end, they ask, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this?" In doing so, they turn the obstacle into their greatest teacher. Every setback holds potential for transformation. The obstacles we face don't break us, they make us who we are. And once we begin to see obstacles as part of the journey, we realize that every challenge is a step forward. But how do we ensure we keep progressing even when the path seems unclear? That's where the next Stoic principle comes in. The importance of clarity and focus, keeping our eyes on what truly matters. 10. Taking action with courage and virtue. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast unknown, the winds of uncertainty howling around you. The path ahead is unclear and every step forward feels daunting. In this moment, you have a choice: to retreat into the safety of inaction, or to summon the courage to step forward, knowing that virtue lies in the act, not the outcome. This is the essence of Stoic courage, the courage to act in alignment with virtue, no matter the external circumstances. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. True courage comes from the alignment of our actions with what we know is right. Marcus Aurelius, despite his many challenges, never wavered in his commitment to acting with virtue. He was not just a ruler, but a Stoic who recognized that courage is more than just physical bravery. It is the courage to live in harmony with nature, to act with integrity, and to stand firm in the face of adversity. He wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, courage begins in the mind, with the decision to act in accordance with your highest values rather than being swayed by fear or external pressure. Consider the courage of Epictetus, who was born into slavery and faced immense hardship throughout his life. Despite his circumstances, he never allowed himself to be controlled by external forces. Instead, he focused on what he could control: his thoughts, actions, and responses. He taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True freedom and courage, then, come from the ability to act from a place of virtue, no matter the situation. In our own lives, courage doesn't necessarily mean facing down physical danger. It means acting with integrity in the small moments, standing firm in our values even when it's uncomfortable. It means having the courage to speak up when silence would be easier, to pursue our goals despite setbacks, and to live truthfully even when faced with societal pressure. True virtue is about doing what is right, regardless of the consequences. Courage and virtue go hand in hand. One cannot exist without the other. And when you act with both, you align yourself with your highest purpose, not with fear or desire. So when faced with a decision, ask yourself, What is the virtuous choice here? What would the courageous path look like? In choosing virtue over comfort, you begin to forge a life of meaning and integrity. And as we step forward with courage and virtue, we begin to realize that this journey is not a sprint, but a lifelong practice. That brings us to our next Stoic principle, patience and persistence, finding peace in the process. We've journeyed through the key Stoic principles that can empower you to conquer any challenge life throws your way. From perception, seeing challenges as opportunities, to embracing adversity, to mastering your emotions, and transforming setbacks into strength. We've learned that the true path to overcoming obstacles lies within our ability to control our responses and actions, not external circumstances. Stoicism teaches us to embrace discomfort, act with courage and virtue, and stay disciplined in our pursuit of growth. In the end, the obstacle is never the problem. It's how we meet it that defines us. So what will you do next? Will you let life's challenges break you? Or will you take the Stoic path and turn each obstacle into a stepping stone toward your personal greatness? The choice is yours, but it begins with action, and it begins now. If this video has inspired you, don't let the lesson end here. Take a moment to reflect. What challenge are you facing today, and how can you apply Stoic wisdom to overcome it? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and let's start a conversation about how we can all grow through adversity. And if you want more wisdom that can change your life, don't forget to subscribe to Stoic Truth. Join the community, where we dive deep into timeless philosophies, equipping you with the tools to live a life of purpose, power, and peace. Remember, the path to mastering life starts with a single step. Start now, subscribe, share, and together, let's conquer any challenge life throws at us.